So today what we're going to be doing is painting the sphere, the cone, and the last video that I did was drawing it, so we're going to move on to painting it. I'm going to paint it in purple, so just to give myself something to look at, I went ahead and rolled up some purple paper and created one. I'm just going to point out some things really quickly. So with the cone, you still have the four areas like what we did when we did the sphere. Here's the sphere, and with the cone, I want you to notice that you'll have the four areas, but they are less dramatic. So for example, you've got your highlight, your transitional area right here, your core. You do have reflected light. It is easier to see in reality than it is on the film. I'm not sure if it's going to show up as well as I'd like it on film, but there is reflected light back up in here, and then here's your cast shadow. The reflected light is less dramatic on the cone, and the reason for that is if you really think about the shape of a sphere really juts out in this direction and sort of hangs over the surface of what it's sitting on. The cone doesn't do that. The cone goes away from the surface. So it's going to be less dramatic. You're not going to have this really bright area like you would in a sphere. So it's something to keep in mind. But the reason why I like to do the sphere first is because since it is so dramatic, you can really see it. And you do have that happening here. And if you make yourself a cone, you really will see it. I can see that there is a bit of lighter area reflecting up into here, particularly in the bottom portion of the cone, into this, the back side of it, the shadow. I can also see the core. I can see the core running right along here. I can see, here's the shadow, the reflected light in the shadow, the transition, the highlight, and the cast shadow. I can also see a little bit of purpley, purple, color shining into here, which once again, you would possibly have to make a cone for yourself to be able to see this. I'm not sure that the camera is sensitive enough to pick that up, but there is a bit of purple light. So when I paint it, you'll see me doing those things. All right. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is, like I did before, I did just a little quick outline. I'm gonna wet it to help prepare the surface and have the water. You can see there's a tiny bit of color on my brush. That's because I've been mixing up the purple paint, and I'll show that to you in a minute. I want to get the whole surface a little bit wet. Kind of helps the paint to go down a little more smoothly and evenly if it's already had some water put on it. And always, if you put on too much water, you can actually take water back out with your brush. That's where it's good to have a paper towel and again a Q-tip. You can actually lift it with the brush and put it onto the paper towel. It dries it a little faster if you accidentally got it too saturated. So what I've done here, I've got my pure purple, and then I've started to mix a little bit of a shading for the purple. So remember, when you're making the shaded area, you want to add just a little bit of the opposite color in there. You don't want it to look like the opposite color. I don't want it to look like yellow. I want to use the yellow to just slightly neutralize the purple, and then turn it more into this, a little bit. So here's my bright for the brights. Here's my slightly neutralized purples. And I also have black up over here because the surface that my cone is sitting on is white. So I can use that when I'm doing the cast shadow as well. All right, So now I'm just gonna, like when we did with the sphere, I'm gonna give it a kind of a nice base. At the same time, I'm gonna keep it lighter over here as best I can. So I'm gonna start with this side, give it some color, and move on over to this side. All right now, Jack. All right now, baby, hang on. Jack. Oh, he wants attention so badly. He keeps nudging me. Okay, and if I get, I want that light area to be really lighter, so I'm getting it a little bit too dark right now. Actually, I'm going to go back in and dab some of the brightness back into it. There's kind of a base. I'm going to, I want to pull some of this, oops, back out. And if I can, it might be too late to get much of it out of there. That's okay. Not too, everything's relative. It's not really too light, too dark. To make it appear a little bit brighter, what I'll probably end up doing is going a little bit darker here. So. And I haven't even really put the shading colors in yet. This is all just kind of the base, the underpainting. I'm gonna add, once this is dry, I'm gonna add the shading on top of it. This is just dark to light, dark to light. And again, you can get a bit of water on your brush. Keep this area light, is the plan. And just because you got all the color laid down doesn't mean you stop. You can, as long as it's wet, you can keep kind of moving it around. It's like drawing a little bit. Your brush, see how you can still manipulate it quite a bit as it's drying. Alright, so sorry, I realized the paint was a little bit out of the picture, so let me show you that again. Here's where you can see the yellow and how I mixed it together with the purple to get much more neutralized. See how bright that is? That's more neutralized. So I want to go back in and use some of that on the core, because that's where that sort of darker, more neutralized color starts. Oop, that might be a little bit too neutralized, but that's okay. I can just blend that in. Go right on up to the tip here. And then just I want to get some more water on there because that is pretty dark. It's okay. Always can blend it in, right? Yeah, it's not too dark. We do need to blend it in on the other side though. We don't want it to look like it's folded. That's where those soft blends are important. Otherwise it just looks like a folded piece of paper, not a cone. I want to leave that sort of little bit of bright area in the middle. I'm going to go back and make this a bit softer of a transition by adding some of this pure purple right here, and let it kind of then blend in on the other side. Alright, I'm going to get ready to put some paint for the cast shadow. I'm going to start out kind of lightly because you've got a lot of different, in this case, being that this cone is purple, purple is a really dark color, and the cast shadow is really competing in darkness for the darks that are on the cone. So, this even really appears darker than the cast shadow. So I'm going to start kind of light so that I have be able to do a range and get really dark over here. Keep this sort of light area right here, and then my variations that I want here. So I'm going to start light. First just water. Or water with a little bit, whatever. It's okay if it's not pure water because it's not going to be white. Don't want it too wet because I don't want it to look really, I just don't want it to be that wet on wet look. Just a little bit wet. All right, so now I'm going very neutral, and I'm just going to go ahead and give the whole thing a little bit of a light color, maybe leave it a little bit lighter even in the very center. I'm hoping my cone is dry enough. I might be rushing a little. Kind of good to do the two completely separately. Let the cone dry completely and then do the cast shadow. I'm gonna leave it a little bit like that because as it's drying, I'm gonna manipulate this all a little bit, and just gonna start like that. I probably am going to go back and do this because you've got this really light area out here. So, I mean, I could do that right now. to let it dry a little bit because I'm getting taking too much risk here with this being wet and this being wet, having the two things bleed together. So it still needs to go darker, but if you look at it carefully, it's a tricky shadow. So if you look at the tip part of it, I've got the color just about right. It's lighter, but it gets darker right here. But it's interesting, it's almost like a line. It gets darker, and then there's still light right in here. And you need that light because, well, that's your reflected light, and then you've got that super dark area over there. So I've got a little more work to do to get the shadow where I want it. So I'm going to go in, add another area of dark, one a bit darker. Go in like that. But I don't want it to look unblended. I want it to have this light area in here. But at the same time, it needs to be darker. So it's going to take a little bit of layering to get it the way I want it. And I don't want the lines to be that strong of a differentiation between here and here. So, but if I do it right this second, it's gonna just get all blended together. So I'm gonna give it a second to dry, and I guess just if I work from this side, it should blend it in just a little bit. This, of course, is a little bit too extreme here. I could go now, though, back and put a little bit of that purple in there to be able to play with. Yeah, you know, you've got to interpret reality. It's not going to be exactly like reality, and that's okay. That's what makes it art and not a, well, I mean pictures. I was going to say art and not a photograph, although photographs can be art, but that's what makes it a painting and not a photograph. All right. Okay, I'm kind of liking that. It's softer. It's almost where I want it. I'm still gonna let this dry a little bit because I want to get this right here, and I don't want, if I do it when it's too wet, it'll just blend right into it. So I want to, when it dries a little bit, I'm going to go in here and get this super dark spot right in there. right, so that concludes it for today. Give it a try, have some fun, and have a good day. Bye, y'all.